This. Firstly, happy Chiang Mai SEO week. Is everyone having a good week? Yeah. Not too hungover? Because I think originally we had 100 people register for the event. So I think the other 60 are probably still in bed. So you're the brave souls that have decided to get up this morning. So I guess today's talk it's going to be about sales and basically how to maximize the revenue you currently have in your business. So the topic of the talk is how to double your agency's revenue without getting more leads. Just to make sure I'm in the right room, does everyone here run an agency? Or who has an agency? Okay, we're in the right room. So, who am I? Can everyone see the screen as well? Okay, I understand it's a bit small, but this was me 12 years ago. So to just give you context, I don't come from a traditional sales background. Like, I'm a founder first. So this was me in my first business, thinking that this was business. Obviously, I didn't have a beard. I had a baby face, but I was going around to radio stations trying to pump and promote my business at the time, which was a skincare company. The challenge was, I invested all my money. I spent 12 months of my time developing a product that I couldn't sell. Right? Worse than that, I realized I had a massive fear of rejection. So when I realized this strategy wasn't working of trying to get local media to promote my business, I tried to do cold calling. So I created a list of the companies I wanted to target, got their phone numbers, and then just as I was about to ring the phone, I couldn't do it. I froze. So at that time, I was very fortunate to meet this man. I was only 21 when I met him. Has anyone ever heard of Dragon's Den? Dragon's Den, right? So Sean, where I'm from, is one of the dragons in Ireland. And so when I was in my early 20s, I said, Sean, why do businesses fail? And he said, Alan, one word, sales. They don't have enough of sales. So when I got that insight at a young age, it kind of stuck to my brain like a virus. And at the time, my business was failing massively. So I had to make the difficult decision that every founder hates to do, and that's to get a job, right? And that job was in sales. So over the last, I was in sales for 10 years. So in my career being in sales for 10 years, I worked with companies like Twitter, who were doing $1 billion of revenue at the time, companies like Time Doctor, who were a scaling SaaS company who went up to do $21 billion a year, all the way to becoming a VP of sales at a startup called LightFlow. The reason I bring, I guess, this experience to you now is, again, to illustrate, I don't come from a traditional sales background. I had to learn sales because my business was failing. And as a result of learning sales, with companies at very different levels, from $1 billion revenue to startups, I've been able to see what works and what doesn't work. Why are some companies able to scale and why are some companies failing, right? So I guess my goal for today's workshop is to try to impart some of that knowledge and experience for you so you can avoid some of the mistakes I made early on in my business career. So the goal of the workshop is to show you how to scale your revenue using the leads you already have by installing a proven sales system that makes your conversions predictable and scalable. So the secret here is any business that I've seen that has been able to scale, they've all had an effective sales system, right? So today I'm going to show you the proprietary sales frameworks we use with our clients that makes them get their results so you can achieve a result for your business as well. So in my business, RevPact, so that's the company I run, the line I hear from most businesses who have a sales challenge is, we just need more leads, right? Who here would like more leads? Most businesses want more leads, right? So let's do a little thought experiment. So which option would you choose? Option A, I can give you 20% more leads. Option B, I can increase your conversion rate by 20%. So show of hands, who would go option A? And show of hands, who would go option B? Okay, this is interesting because usually it's the other way around, but I think you know where this is going. So if we're actually to look at the numbers, what What does pulling on these different levers actually do for your business? But I want to see if this comes through okay. So if we go on a baseline, right, let's say right now your business has 100 leads, you're currently closing at 10% conversion rate, you have 10 clients, you're making 20K MRR. Cool, right? And we're assuming we charge 2K for our service. If we're to increase our leads by 20%, we'll get up to 120 leads, our conversion rate stays the same, and we get an extra 4K. However, if we add 20% an increase in conversion, instead of going more leads, we essentially double the amount of clients we have. That's essentially a double effect by just working on this part, right? And so typically what this looks like, if you look at it from a sales funnel perspective, most founders, most businesses are obsessed with the top part here. And this isn't just startups or six-figure agencies, or it's seven-figure agencies as well. Founders at all different levels, they're focusing on this part, right? And I'll explain why they're not focusing on the other part in a second. So, and here it is. Why most agencies don't focus on conversion rates. One, they don't know it's a problem. Why do they not know it's a problem? It's because they don't track it. For most founders, leads are very easy to track. You look at your marketing campaigns, you see what's being delivered, and you're like, okay, that's the number. But they never follow up to see, okay, what percentage of these leads are actually leading to a sale? This can be, there's a lot of reasons why this is problematic. One of them being, if you keep investing in marketing to deliver more leads, but they're not converting, again, it's like that analogy that I showed you there of the funnel. You're pouring more at the top, and then more is coming out on the sides. And lastly, the big one is it's a belief. They believe more lead gen equals more revenue, which is partially true, but it doesn't give the full picture, right? So why more leads isn't the growth lever you think it is, right? And there's three core reasons to consider here. One is the speed, right? If you say, okay, yes, we want more leads, generally it doesn't just happen tomorrow or next week. You have to put a campaign in place to generate those leads. And that can either be through an ad campaign, you want to create a new funnel, you want to do cold outreach, you want to hire salespeople. So there's a time and cost issue. Whereas with the conversion, if you fix that, you can fix it immediately, and you can essentially relatively do it for free if you're going to do it by yourself and you have the knowledge and expertise to do it. What does that do to our profit margin? It's going to shrink it because we're spending more money to get the leads, whereas here it expands. There's essentially no cost to do it, right? So this way, more inefficient, but more business owners think this is the right way. This way, higher conversion, more efficient, but most businesses don't focus on that part. And so essentially the $1 million blind spot most agencies don't see, right? So a lot of the companies we work with, just to give you context, generally their close rate is at 10%. And that sounds low, but the reason is they've never tracked it before until they work with a company like ours and we actually get in to see what's happening with their leads. There's a KPI later on in the deck that I'll show you that if you're generating inbound leads, it should hit a certain percentage figure. I'll share that later in the slides. But for now, if we're to take, let's say you're converting 20% of your inbound leads, which is okay. You're generating nearly a million. If you're to increase the close rate from 20 to 40%, which I'll show you examples, this is what we do with some of the businesses we work with, you essentially get another $1 million jump in revenue. And that's just on the first year. If you compound that over year on year, and you don't fix this, you're essentially losing $3 million. Again, these numbers are based on if you're, let's say, an SEO agency charging $2K a month, and you're getting 200 leads a year. I would say this is the first presentation I've done where I've demonstrated the numbers like this. The reason being is the talks that I've done, particularly over the last 18 months, I kept hearing and seeing the same problems. And my background now as a salesperson, I found like, Jesus, I really had to convince the founders to like look at this thing. But the reality was I wasn't doing a good enough job. I had to actually show them the cost of not solving the problem. And if your sales process doesn't have something where you're speaking about the cost of an action with your prospects, I would highly consider you to do it. Because if you look at any lever to try to get someone to become a client, the cost of inaction is one of the highest levers that you can pull. So now as an agency, if we're speaking to an agency, they tell us a certain conversion rate, we tell them what we think we can get them, we now have to show them if you don't fix that and things don't change, this could be the problem. So instead of them thinking they just want to increase conversion rate, it's like, no, you potentially have a $3 million problem that if you don't solve, it's going to hurt the value of your business. And we have to speak to agency owners like that, because a lot of agency owners we deal with, ultimately they have a vision of selling the business. And if you want to sell your business, your investors are going to be looking at all of this. So instead of waiting 1 year and try to get your business ready to sell, it's like, get these things in place now, because your revenue is going to be a lot healthier as a result. So to demonstrate an example of this, has anyone actually been to SEO Mastery in Saigon? Anyone go to SEO Mastery? Few hands. If you haven't, SEO Mastery is happening in March in Saigon again this year. I would highly encourage you to go. Like, one of the best conferences I've ever been to. The reason I bring this up is because at SEO Mastery this year, I met this woman called Victoria, who was running an SEO agency out of Brooklyn. So I was hosting a workshop on outbound sales, how to generate leads for your business. So Victoria comes up to me after the workshop and she was like, yes, I have this problem. Can you help me generate more leads for my business? And I'm like, okay, cool. Before I do that, Victoria, can I validate a few things? And she was like, what? So then I started asking her more questions about her business, and then we did a proper audit on her business to kind of see what kind of state it was in. And to our shock, because she's a great presenter, she's actually a speaker on stage, super confident, to our shock, Victoria only had a conversion rate of 5 to 10%. That means for every 10 leads she was getting, she was only converting about 1 in 10. And this problem she had for about 5 years. And a lot of the businesses we work with, they have an issue with conversion for many years, but they don't realize it's a problem until they're like, okay, we need to get more leads, more leads. So when we hear more leads, now I interpret it as a way of, okay, let's take a deeper look at the business. So as a result of working together, we took her close rate from 5 to 10% to 100%. Now, I want to caveat one thing here. I would say this is generally an outlier. The KPI I'll share with you later of what to hit is less than that. But for her, we were able to hit 100%. Why? Because when we looked at her sales system, she was omitting key things that were hurting her conversion rate, right? The more interesting part, I think, is the cost of opportunities. So as a result of the leads she was getting before not converting, she was losing out in about an extra 60K in revenue every month. If you compound that over a year, that's about 700K. Over 5 years, that's about 3.5 million. So like, these numbers are not sensationalist. This is what we see happening in most businesses. So for her business, it got to the point that she was closing so much of the leads, she actually had to stop selling because her fulfillment basically got, she couldn't fulfill anymore. Now she had to deal with the next problem of the business of getting more people to fulfill her service. So the key thing here, she went from having an inconsistent sales system to a consistent sales system. And to show you the impact it has in a short space of time, in 12 weeks as a result of fixing this, we're able to increase our annual contract value by 150K. That's how powerful these levers are once you work on them in your business. So the framework, and this is transitioning to basically the bulk of the material I'm going to share with you for the rest of the talk. The framework we use with clients to not only fix their conversion rate, but to scale their sales, it's called the 3P sales model. How many P's? 3 P's. Okay, cool. Right, we're here, we're attentive. First one is the process, second one is the playbook, and lastly is the people. So over the course of the next 15, 20 minutes, that's what I'm going to go through with you guys. So on the process, right? So how do we build a sales process that will enable us to scale? There's 6 elements, right? So someone like Victoria, when we see a close rate that low, we essentially attack it from 6 angles with our scale system. And so the first part is strategy. Most businesses we work with don't have a sales strategy, so we get that right from day one. 2, We put in the infrastructure to help with the conversions. Infrastructure, when we're talking about infrastructure, is all around the CRM, right? Not just the CRM, but how you actually map your sales process on the CRM, so you have visibility on where your deals are in the pipeline, and then having templates to put into your CRM to make sure you're taking the right notes on the prospects who are in your CRM. So that's point 2. Point 3 is the offer. As well as, so one of the big themes we've seen working with agencies this year is 1, they all say we need more leads. And then 2, most of them aren't confident in their offer. And once you start working on your offer, that will help your conversions. How we do it with our clients, we basically look at an offer from 3 angles. And we call it the good, better, and best model. You see, a lot of the times when businesses are having offers and they're having trouble with the offer is because the offers don't make sense, right? To give you an analogy, the way an offer should be, if you're having 3 options, think of it from the perspective of how McDonald's do it. You get your burger, that's offer 1. Offer 2 is you get your burger and fries. Offer 3 is you get your burger, fries, and you get your Coke. That's how you should be thinking about your offer. It should be a gradual increase of value that prospects get in return, obviously, for more money. 4th, the lead and call process. This is essentially all around the scripts, what to say from first call to close, and how to structure the calls so that you're making the most of the time that you have with the prospects. A lot of times, founders we work with, they basically wing it on the calls. There's no structure. Every call feels different, and that impacts the conversion rate massively. The last one, now we're getting to the cherry on top, is the enablement and training, right? So what we saw with the businesses we were working early on, it's one thing to give them all the material, right? It's like telling someone, okay, you want to drive a car, you don't know how to drive a car, here's the book on how to drive a car. And as you know, if you've ever driven a car, that's not the most effective way to learn. So this is where the enablement and training comes in. So as well as giving them the car, we will teach them and coach them on how to drive the car properly and successfully. And then lastly is the data part. Again, most businesses we work with, they're not tracking their data. So we help them basically put the KPIs in place as well as the tracking system to evaluate how their performance is in their sales system. So, if I haven't sold you enough on why you need to work on the conversion rate, there's essentially 3 areas that you need to have an optimized sales process. 1, you need to have it because you're going to consistently close more sales, which will bring more revenue. 2, you won't be able to scale without it. So if you have any aspirations of scaling your business or ultimately selling your business, you need to have this in place. Without it, you won't, because if you start hiring salespeople and they don't have a process to work from, it's going to be chaos, which I'll demonstrate in later slides. And lastly, it'll give you more confidence. This is, I would say, is another an element that people don't talk enough about. I mean, I can empathize with this a lot because when I first started my business and I was selling, I had no confidence. And then that comes true when you're having your conversations with your prospects. Like the same way that dogs can smell fear, people can smell fear. And so again, a lot of the founders we work with, they're lacking a bit of confidence. And having that optimized sales process gives them that confidence, right? So what most businesses' sales process look like. Again, I don't say this to kind of point holes at people, but it's just, this is what we've seen. And most founders we work with, most CEOs, they just haven't put the time in to building a sales process that their team can use and that they can use. And again, when you don't have this, every sales call is going to feel different, and then that's going to impact your confidence on the calls. Your current conversion rate will hurt you as a result. It'll probably be less than 20 or 25%. And again, you'll struggle to scale and you'll hate sales. So, how do we know if we have an effective sales process or not? Who here likes numbers? People like numbers? Okay, people like numbers, people like data. So data, particularly in sales, is super important. And I would say even more so when you're beginning to hire salespeople. Why? Salespeople are great talkers. And if you don't have KPIs to keep them accountable, they will end up staying in your job or in your company a lot longer than they should because they're great at talking their way out. So how do we know if we have an effective sales process or not? So this is the figure that we need to optimize for. We should be looking to convert 30 to 40% of our qualified inbound leads. So back of the paper, rule of thumb, you get 10 leads, you want to be making sure 3 out of 4 close. If you're not converting that, then you have a conversion problem. So that's the thing to work on. That's the problem. Not getting more leads, it's that. So, case in point, so I have an agency owner that I'll bring up to maybe share their story in a minute, Milan, who's currently helping with the filming. So when we started working with them this year, again, same story. They're like, Alan, we have a lead problem. If we just get more leads, our business will be happy. I'll be happy. We'll all be happy. The reality is when we did a sales audit on the business, they were converting less than 10% of their leads. As a result of putting in a proper sales system, they're now converting 80% of their inbound leads that are coming in. So that's essentially 11x increase from what they were before. And in terms of what that does to revenue, in less than 12 weeks, they were able to triple their revenue. So instead of me talking about PlayStack and Milan, maybe share a brief few minutes of his experience, maybe give a background about PlayStack, what they do, what situation they were in maybe 12 months ago, and maybe why they decided to actually change. So maybe a quick round of applause for Milan.
It's very interesting because we met exactly 1 year ago. We were just talking about how we had lunch 1 year ago and the changes that have happened over the last 12 months. And then he spoke about SEO Mastery. That was in March. That's when we haven't started working yet together. But a bit of background, I run a YouTube agency. So we help businesses grow YouTube channels, basically. We do the whole management, a lot of fulfillment, a lot of stress. Now, we actually had a really good start of 2025. We had an all-time high in March. And so we're like, okay, cool. We know what we're doing, let's double down on it, and let's start investing in marketing. And so we hired a marketing team. And we started with cold email. We even tried ads last year, which was a big problem. But yeah, we tried to do marketing. And we wanted to take it in-house, so we had control over it. But for 8 months or so, we just spent money, nothing came through. And basically it was like, what's going wrong? Like we thought we were doing well because the reason that we were doing well in the beginning of the year is because conference seasons, like this year, conference seasons is, you meet a lot of people and then you start converting those leads from the conferences. And that's why the beginning of 2025 was big for us. But then those leads dried up in the middle of the year. So this was about June or so this year. And because we've been spending so much on marketing, we had a lot of cost opportunity. Also, we had no idea what we were doing with sales. Basically, we were being very amicable, where we just wanted to provide as much value as possible on the sales calls, because like if we provide value, then they like us, and then we might convert them, right? Well, no, that wasn't the case. And so March was our biggest month. Then all the way down to August, we dropped down to our lowest month in 2 years. So I was like, damn, like we've worked for so many years and now we're back to where we were like there. So it was very frustrating. And we started a conversation with Alan about July or so. And same conversations, like we have a lead problem. Well, we don't, because we just have a leaky bucket. That's actually he didn't show that, like it was a graph with a bucket with holes in it, and I just thought that if I put in enough of them on top, enough will come down on the bottom. But no, we started working with him on a 12-week coaching program. Within the first 4 weeks, we increased conversions immediately because it was just the processes and the systems that we didn't have that just had to be in place, right? Also, we then started selling. And so August was our lowest. This month, we more than tripled our revenue since August, purely because we we didn't even have that much more leads or anything. It was just we're converting everything from now on. Also because it gives us the confidence that, hey, our offer is actually not that bad, because we were kind of like thinking like, are we just bad at what we do? Is like people don't think that what we have is good. But no, it gives us a lot more confidence. Also, it allows us to not take every sales call, because I think that's a big thing where you're like, I have a sales problem or I have a lead problem. I'm going to take every lead I can, try to sell it. But in the end of the day, most of them are unqualified. Right now, I'd say 9 out of 10 are qualified when we take the call. Also, the difference was like...
Did you change your offer?
No, not at all.
No change your offer?
No, made it more expensive even. So I was able to like raise prices, be more confident about everything. So it wasn't an offer, offer problem at all. Just the right systems, and we're still in like only 10 weeks in or so, and the fun part still needs to start. But yeah, for me personally, I'm not even the sales guy. I do a little bit, but it's my business partner that does most of it, who actually hates sales. But it's a lot more motivating to start closing, and even so that we start closing people that we're like, we don't really want to close this necessarily, but like if we just charge more or whatever, you know that feeling as an agency owner is like, I don't necessarily want this lead, but if I can sell it for a good amount of money, why not? So that's how it's going right now, yeah. I mean, I can keep talking about like, it's just like nonstop good news. And when I heard, because I know Victoria personally as well, I worked with her, and she complained about, I have too much work now. So this is the condo if you want to work with Alan. There's too much work right now. We, like in the first week of November, we had more revenue come in than the last 6 months. And I'm at a conference and I have to onboard more clients, so it's very tough now. Good problem to have.
Thanks for sharing, Milan. Milan said something interesting, right? That his business partner hated sales. Would there be anyone here who'd have that feeling towards sales as well? Or let me ask it a different way. Who here loves sales? Okay, so about 30% of the room. The reason I bring this up is because your feeling towards something will actually dictate your performance in it. So Mike, which is Milan's business partner, he was dreading all the sales calls, right? Because particularly if you're not bringing in new customers, what happens? You build up more internal pressure. You start doubting yourself. Am I good enough? Is the company good enough? God, do I have to take another sales call? Because the sales call is not going to go well. So there is a part of this where mindset is important, and it can be very difficult to get that perspective, particularly when your business is beginning to slump, right? So thanks for sharing, Milan. So maybe a question for you guys. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your current sales process? 1 being not good, and 1 being basically you're not really converting many of the deals you're getting, whereas 10, you're converting, let's say, 80% plus of the leads are coming in. Take a quick mental note of that, because at the end of the presentation, I'm going to ask you a question that's going to wrap all of this in. Right, so, and if you'd like more clarity on that, so we are offering a free sales audit. Essentially, we've designed this audit where it'll ask you questions to really figure out at what part of your sales funnel are you leaking revenue. So we've essentially mapped out, I think, 20 to 25 questions that'll systematically look at the top of your funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of the funnel, and then at the end of it, once you answer those questions, you'll be delivered a report of recommendations of what you should do right now in terms of how to improve your sales process. And I'll have a slide at the end where you can take a scan of that if you didn't get it earlier. So we've gone through the playbook, or sorry, the process. Now we're going through the playbook, which is the second P, right? So we need to get the process right, so you, the CEO, you, the founder, can start converting more of the deals that come in. There's going to come a point in your business where you're too busy, right? The business is doing well. You're going to have to make a decision, right? If you want to step out of sales, and if you want to step out of sales, what does that look like? Do you want to hire a team? If you want to hire a team, okay, how do we do that? So the way in which you do it, that most people, even in the game I'm in, talking about sales, they rarely talk about a sales playbook. So think of a sales playbook as a bridge from you selling by yourself to having a team selling for you. Essentially what you want in the playbook is everything in your mind, right? So all the things you've been doing before to sell, we need to get that in a structured playbook so that your salespeople can sell like you're selling, right? So, and here's a quick example on the right. So what is a sales playbook? Think of it essentially like an operational manual where you're going to map out everything that your team has to say, who are they saying it to, and we need to outline the KPIs and performance criteria to make sure everyone on the team is singing off the same hymn sheet, right? So why you need a sales playbook before hiring? So I would say this is the biggest mistake and most costly mistake I see founders make when they want to bring on salespeople. They hire salespeople without having this step in place, right? Anyone here ever heard of Get Me Links? I think I see this gentleman, you're wearing the Get Me Links hat. Do you know the company's Get Me Links? No. Okay, it's so Alejandro was giving.
The link building must be here.
Yes, yeah, Alejandro, the CEO, he was giving out those hats on Sunday. Which, by the way, I must add, they're probably one of the most soft hats I've ever worn. So if you haven't got a Get Me Links hat yet, either try to buy it from this man or meet Alejandro. He'll be around Chiang Mai SEO. So his business, 7-figure agency, they want to hire more salespeople. So what they asked us to do was to help them build a playbook. And the reason you need to have a playbook before you hire more salespeople, there's a few reasons. One, it'll increase the overall performance of your sales reps. Two, it's essentially going to give them a guide in which to follow, ensuring that there's going to be consistency across the sales team. And then three, having this in place will actually enable you to scale, because then it becomes a game of just getting different people to execute the playbook that you have in place. When you don't have this in place, and I see this a lot, you'll churn and burn through sales reps. Worse than churning and burning through sales reps, you'll think all sales reps are full of shit and they're not good. The reality is, if you don't give sales reps a process and structure in which to operate within, they're not going to be successful. And that's why if you look at is there any sports fans here? Anyone like sports, right? If you look at any successful sports team, they all have a playbook. They have a coach. This is the plays we're going to run, and we're going to train to be able to execute on the plays. That same analogy works the exact same in business, right? So you'll churn and burn through sales reps. You won't be able to scale your sales team. And the last one, and it's the most pernicious one, you'll damage your brand's reputation. How will you damage your brand's reputation? If you've different sales reps saying different things to get a sale, and then once you onboard them, they realize that what you promised is not what you delivered, it's going to lead to negative reviews, negative word of mouth, and your company is going to start churning customers. And if you're an agency owner, you know how important churn rate is. You want to keep that as low as possible. So when you're putting the work into hiring these salespeople, you need to have the process and playbook to ensure that once you're bringing these new customers on, they're not churning. So then the question becomes, how do we build a playbook that allows our team to close 30 to 40% of our leads? So we need 3 core fundamentals, right? 1 is the who, 2 is the what, and 3 is the how. So the who is basically who we're selling to. So to explain this, right, ICP, IBP. ICP is your ideal customer profile. The IBP is the ideal buyer profile. They're 2 different things. So to give you an example, let's say your ICP is Fortune 500 companies. You're like, okay, so I want to go after all the Fortune 500 companies. But you need to identify who the buyer is within the organization. And then you need to tailor your selling to that person, because different people in a business have different objectives. So we need to speak to those particular objectives. The who is the positioning and messaging. How are we going to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace? Because any market we're in, there's going to be some level of competition. So we need to, when we're on a sales call, we need to be able to answer the question to the prospect, what makes us different? And then lastly is the pricing. So that's the first fundamental. The second is the what. So these are the tangible things, like what we're going to say to our prospect. Our scripts, how we handle the objections, and essentially the tech tools and enablement tools that will enable our sales staff to perform at a high level. So we have who, 1, what, 2, and then 3 is the how, which I would say is probably the biggest blind spot in agencies we work with. They're not clearly setting out which KPIs to deliver on, which is problematic. If you have a salesperson without a goal, they're not going to be successful. 2 is the feedback. Salespeople need feedback on their performance. They even value it more than money, which will surprise a lot of people, but they're the type of personality they want to constantly get better. And then lastly is in the reviews. Basically, call reviews, sales reviews, so they're constantly improving. So what should be included? This is just an example, by the way, of what to include in your playbook. This is just an example of basically an end-to-end sales script of like what a sales rep should say on each different element of the call, right? Have that in. And then another example here is around the financial model of these are the KPIs we need to hit in terms of revenue, sales, proposals, opportunities, activities, right? I would say if you're like early stage agency, still doing 6 figures, you probably don't need this yet. But when you get to 7 figures, you will need it. And if you've ambitious aspirations to scale, you will need to put in models like this so that when you're doing your quarterly, monthly reviews, you have a way of actually assessing where you are to the KPI. And if you're not hitting your KPIs, then it becomes a game of, okay, why are we not hitting our KPIs? If you've done all the work that I've said at the start, the process and playbook, generally it's going to be a people problem, which then means we can solve the people problem. And we can do that in 2 ways. 1, we can try to put them on a PIP, which is called a performance improvement plan, where we'll give them extra training and coaching to improve. Or 2, we fire them and we replace them with someone who can hit the KPI. So this is how we 5X'd online optimizer sales. So online optimizers, they're a GMB agency. So Donal at the time was doing all the sales himself, and basically he got to a point he didn't want to do sales anymore. So basically we helped him with a sales rep, we helped him put the process and playbook in place, and as a result of doing that, we were able to help him 5X the sales and increase revenue by 420%. So again, back to you, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your current sales playbook? If you don't have a sales playbook, then obviously you're a 1. If you do have a sales playbook and your team are hitting your KPIs, that would be a 10, right? So have a think about that. Who here actually has a sales playbook in their business? Okay, a few hands. Okay. Moving on. So the people part, right? So we've got the process, we've got the playbook. Now we need to get the people. And there's a lot of misconceptions around the people part that I want to dispel here. So when and how to hire reps so you can finally step out of sales. So why do most agencies burn cashes on sales hires? 1, they hire too early, and this goes back to the point of not having a playbook in place. 2, they don't have the playbook. And 3, there's no accountability. So I was at a mastermind on Sunday. I went to Link Building Mastery. Did anyone else here go to Link Building Mastery? Few hands. So one of the agencies at the table basically shared a story, and they're doing quite well, where they hired a salesperson, and then originally it seemed like the salesperson was doing great. They were following the process. But ultimately, their performance kept declining until ultimately they had to fire them. And what they realized in the process of having to fire them is that they had no clear KPI set up. And then once they actually started doing proper call reviews, the sales rep wasn't actually following the process. So this is where over time, you're going to need to have an accountability layer in your sales team. So how do you do that? right? 1, process, 2, playbook, 3, people. And I keep mapping it out like this because what we tend to see agencies do, instead of starting with process, playbook, people, they start with people, and then they're like, okay, this isn't working, maybe we fix the process, and they're like, this still isn't working, let's fix the playbook. So again, we need to follow the sequence: process, playbook, people, the 3P sales model. So if your existing sales process is not converting a minimum of 20%, please, for the love of God, do not hire more sales reps.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Maybe we have to go to another place just after. Is it long now?
We probably have another 10.
10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'd say if it's a rush to get to the other place, I'm assuming it's somewhere else.
6 minutes left, so we have to take the grab so we don't wait 5 minutes more.
Yeah, I would say maybe call the grab, if you're short in time.
No.
Yeah. Okay. What hiring before having this looks like. So eventually, you're going to get stuck, and this is why people, well, founders mostly, they get sick and tired of sales reps, and they just want to stop it. They just want to get someone else to sell for them, but then when someone else sells for them, they're not hitting the KPIs and they're not performing. So the question is, when should you hire sales reps? Proven process, playbook, and this last part that I haven't really talked about, ramp plus management structure. So when I was talking in the previous slide about accountability, this is to solve accountability. So ramp means, right, when you hire a sales rep, realistically, they're not going to be able to sell for you straight away. The term we use in sales, we call it ramping. So usually when you bring in a new sales rep, you might have a 30, 60-day ramp period. Ramp period where they get comfortable with the product, the service, and how to actually sell it. So for me personally, when I was selling with Twitter, we had a 3-week ramp period. And we didn't do any selling. We were just learning about the product, we were learning about the business industry, and then we were learning how to sell it. So once you go through that ramp period, then you're going to need a management structure. So the example I shared about the agency at the mastermind in Link Building Mastery, the reason why his rep failed and why they had to let him go, they had no management structure, right? Anyone here ever hear of Mad Singers? Mad Singers, right? He's at most SEO conferences. So Mads is an expert in management, and one of the key things he does with the organizations he works with, he helps them put this in place. And so essentially what that looks like, for not just a sales rep, but for any other member of staff, they'll have like a one-on-one every week, and in that one-on-one every week, they'll go through their performance and they'll rate it against their KPIs. Then you are ready to scale. So, most owners believe hiring sales reps is a question of where. It's not. Hiring sales reps is a question of what to look for. And so the reason I bring this up is it's a question I get a lot. It's like, where do I hire A players? Do I get them in South Africa? Do I get them on some online job website? Where is irrelevant. What we need to get good at is like what to actually look for, right? And there's four areas that I assess a salesperson if they're going to be effective or not. One, are they goal orientated, right? You can figure out these things in the interview process by learning about their background, right? Did they play sports in school? Did they win any team or individual honors? If they're able to demonstrate that behavior from an early period in childhood, we can kind of make a safe bet to know that in the future there are going to be that type of person, right? So they're the soft things that we can figure out in the interview. The other reason why it's important is that sales can be tough. You are going to face rejection. We need people that are able to break through that toughness, that rejection, and just be super focused on the goal so that if they don't close a sale, it's like, bam, on to the next one. 2 is the skill. Most founders don't do this, but you can assess the skill of a salesperson in the interview process. How do you do that? You do mock calls. Basically, you do scenarios with them where you're basically saying, okay, here's a scenario, I want you to sell this type of service, I'm a prospect, I've never heard of you, go. And you want to see how they act on their feet. The reason you want to see how they act on their feet is that they're going to be dealing with so many different personalities. You want to see if they have the emotional intelligence to be able to calibrate their communication based off the different type of personality they have. And if they're not demonstrating that in the interview process with you, they won't be able to do it effectively when they're selling for you in the marketplace. And then lastly, the culture. So I put this intentionally as the last one because I would say it's the rare business owner who can come at sales hiring with, okay, we're getting someone who is goal-orientated, we're getting someone who has a skill, we're getting someone who has the emotional intelligence, but will they actually fit into the culture of the business? The reason why this is important is because in sales, right, you can hire people who are amazing at all three, but they don't give a shit about your team. They don't give a shit about your company. They're what we call like the lone wolf. They're just there, they just want to sell, they don't want to talk to anyone else, they just want to generate revenue. And if you're early stage, there's going to be times where you may need to make that hire because you're going to be so stressed out if you're doing everything else yourself. But if you want to build a team that has a harmonious and I'd say performance-driven culture, people like that are really negative. And I say that from experience. I've worked with a lot of different sales teams, and one character like that is really like it's a poisonous energy in the group, right? So one thing to keep an eye on. And we're getting to the finish. So what your org structure will look like. Who here, and I didn't ask this, who here are still selling within their business? Okay, right. So if you haven't hired a sales rep and you're thinking about hiring sales reps, the best mental model to do it is actually to hire 2 sales reps at the same time. And I'll tell you why in a minute. I get pushback a lot from this because people are like, geez, that's like 2 people. You know, that's like double the salary. This is going to hurt us. The reality is, unlike most positions in a company, your sales rep should be delivering 4x the revenue of what you pay them in terms of salary. So they're an investment. They're an asset to your business. You can also set it up in a way where you tell both sales reps they're both on a 30-day trial, and at the end of the 30 days, basically the company is going to make a decision on who they're going to go with. And right, that might sound harsh, but what we want to instigate here is competitiveness. We want to see, can they actually start delivering under pressure? And if they can, and they are delivering, you can keep both of them on. And you can say, great, we've actually ran an effective recruitment process where we have 2 people we're confident that can sell. If you only do one, what tends to happen, there's a couple of things. One, you won't have comparative data. Right? You won't be able to see how the other sales rep will perform. They'll just be performing based off of your arbitrary KPIs. And then 2, if they aren't performing and they don't work out, you're going to have to start the whole recruitment process again, which could take another 60 to 90 days. So really, this is a pure just risk mitigation strategy so that you can make sure even if one doesn't work, you have one that does work. And then you can look to fill the next position maybe in the next quarter. So most good owners stop here, but great business owners invest and nurture in their people. And I would say from the businesses we work with, this is a progression, right? Most of the businesses we work with, they just want to fix the revenue part. Then they're like, let's get the team right. And then once they get the team right and they're not afraid about like not making sales and not making money, this is where they're like, okay, we actually want to invest in our people because our people are our asset. And so they do that through training and coaching. So, again, to you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your current salespeople in terms of their performance? 1 is they're terrible, they're not hitting their KPIs. 10 is they're amazing, you want to keep them forever, and they're making you loads of money. So, before we conclude, and the reason I've been asking you to score yourself on certain areas in the business is that weeks like this are great. I love going to conferences, I love meeting people, but the reality is if we're taking all this information and we're not acting on it, then we're wasting our time. So you've decided to commit an hour of your time this morning to learn something from someone who's done it before. So to make the most of your time, consider what are the 2 to 3 sales changes you know you must make now? And if you leave Chiang Mai at the end of next week, Now you know you have something tangible to work on instead of just getting new information. Because the reality is we can get information everywhere. We can get it on the internet, we can get it from people beside us, but there's a big difference between knowing and doing, and particularly in sales, the people who do are the people that get results. So just have a think on that. And then, again, lastly, if you want to get a better understanding of where maybe you're leaking revenue in your sales process, feel free to take advantage of our free sales audit. And that is it. 1 minute past 11. Thank you. And if people have any questions, feel free to shout them up or come up to me after.